cannot have candy. I eat green beans, but I don't like the chicken and tomatoes.
Who is that?
I don't know, but there's now recorded.
That's my
for
granddaughter,
posterity.
sorry.
They're now recorded for posterity, bless their souls. So we'll give everybody a chance to introduce themselves in just a minute. I'm Joan VanBecelaere, and I'm the director of Unitarian Universalist Justice Ohio. And Susan, want to introduce yourself?
I'm Susan Smith. I'm the founder of Crazy Faith Ministries in Columbus, Ohio.
And you're with our little webinar tonight on looking at Every Vote Matters, Ohio 2020, and the next step. I'm going to start us with just a little centering before we get into this tonight. And this is a quote from W.E.B. Du Bois, who says, "Now is the accepted time. Not tomorrow, not some more convenient season, but it is today that our best work can be done, and not some future day or future year. It's today that we fit ourselves for the greater usefulness of tomorrow. Because today is the seed time. Now are the hours of work, and then tomorrow comes the harvest and the playtime. And so we are today building the seed time in hopes of the great harvest." So let me tell you, Susan and I tell you what we're going to do tonight, and then we'll do some introductions. This is a follow-up formally for the December 28th Voter Advocacy Workshop that we had at Bethel AME in Columbus. But we also included a little short review for those of you that were not on the December 28th workshop, and also a couple of places where you can get the material that we did cover on December 28th, okay? Also, something that we're hoping to do tonight is form voter advocacy teams that will then in turn educate, register, and support our fellow Ohio folk in 2020 to help increase voter turnout. And we want to give you tonight the information that you need to volunteer to be on a voter advocacy team, or to be a team leader, or to volunteer with the fundraising or the social media work that we need in order to make the goals happen. And we'll talk about the goals in a little bit. Susan, do you want to run introductions with folk, or?
You can go ahead, because you have, I'm good.
Yeah, I can see the names a little bit better.
Yeah.
Okay.
I don't feel it.
Now we've got 30 people, so I'm going to ask you to give your name, where you live, and just like in 3 words why you're here tonight, okay? And I'm going to call on you so that we don't have any odd, awkward silences. And I'm just going to call on you in the order I see you on my screen, okay? Bullwinkle, you want to go first?
Okay, I am unmuted, and I am Bullwinkle, and I'm from Akron, and I am here.
Good.
What else do we need?
That's it. Why you're here tonight. Okay. Linda, you're next.
Hi, I'm Linda. I'm here in Akron, Ohio from the UUJO, and I'm here because I want to know more about voting and how to help.
Great. Chris Johnson.
Oh, there's 3 of us here, Joan.
Oh, who else? Yes, okay.
I'm Carol Dobbins, and I live in Akron as well. And I'm here because I don't think that there's any better time to be pushing voter registration.
Perfect.
I'm Susan Gallagher from Akron, Ohio. I'm here because this is important to me.
All right, crew. Anybody else there?
That's it.
No, that's it.
Now, Chris Johnson.
I'm Chris Johnson in Columbus, Ohio, and I want to make a difference, and I want my congregation to make a difference in the coming year.
Cool. Leanne.
I'm Leanne Reet, Diocese of Southern Ohio, and we want to do everything we can to get the vote out among all of our parishes.
Beautiful. Elaine. Elaine? We'll come back to Elaine. Dennis.
Yes, I'm Dennis Kay, and I'm in Dayton, Ohio, and I just wanted to learn more about what we could do in terms of the coming election.
Okay. Gretchen.
Gretchen Falstick, Columbus, Ohio, on the hilltop, and voting matters.
Amen. Ray Jane.
Ray Jane Arujo, Cincinnati, Ohio, and I'm hoping to learn more to follow up on UU the Vote from yesterday.
Okay. John.
I'm John Kachuba from St. John's UU in Cincinnati, and I'm here because it's too important not to be here.
And I'll go back to Elaine. Elaine? Okay. And let's see. Then we have Nick.
Nick, my name is Nick Teddy. I live in Coshocton, Ohio, and I'm here to fight voter suppression and do everything I can to make sure everybody in Ohio is allowed to vote.
Okay. And Joe Zielinski.
Zielinski, very good.
All right.
I'm Joe Zielinski. I'm in Toledo, Ohio. I'm with the Multi-Faith Council. And I think we need to do everything we can to increase voter turnout.
Okay. Tad.
Hi, I'm Tad. I'm from Berea, Ohio. And I want to do more than just register folks.
Okay. Elaine, can you introduce yourself?
Is her phone muted or?
No, we can hear you.
No,
Oh,
that
no,
was
we
me,
can't.
Susan. That was not Elaine.
Oh, Elaine. Yeah. Okay. Your microphone's not working. Bless your soul, hon. Elaine Fujimura from Columbus. Okay.
Okay.
Let's see here. Let's go to Kathy.
Hi, how are you? This is Kathy Kennedy. I'm in Westerville, and I'm here because I really think getting the voter turnout is about the only way we're going to turn this around. So
Okay.
I'm here to help register voters.
Great. Chris Jones-Levy.
Hi, this is Chris Jones-Levy and also my husband, Dick Levy, and we are here because every vote in this election is crucial.
Okay. And Bill Jordan, he doesn't have a microphone, but he is from the UU Church of Akron, along with Laurel. Frank Phillips.
Frank, Columbus, increase the voter turnout.
Beautiful. Kathleen?
This is Kathleen Gemeiner. I'm here with my husband, Doug Todd, and both from Columbus, Ohio. I want to spend the time that I have, at least in the first part of the year, working on voter registration and engagement to get more especially young people and people who with low incomes registered to vote who often don't vote.
Thank you, dear. Sarah.
My name is Sarah Weaver. I'm from Columbus, Ohio, and it's a good time to get involved. It's 2020. It's kind of a big year.
It's great to see your face. Edwin.
Yes, I'm Edwin Fuller. I'm from Dayton, Ohio, and I'm here because every day I wake up, I listen to the news, and the most powerful weapon we have is getting people to vote. And so that's what we need to make happen.
Okay. Samuel.
Hello there, I am Samuel Prince and I'm from Akron. Akron is in the house this evening.
Sure is.
And the reason why I am here is because of, let me just say it honestly, to get rid of this administration which we have, but also the mere fact that I just came back from Alabama 2 weeks ago, and crossing that Edmund Pettus Bridge give me all the inspiration that I need right now to get rid of voter suppression.
Bless you. Okay, telephone number ending in 7851.
Good evening. This is Pastor Timothy Liggins.
Hi,
Pastor Bethel. Hello, Pastor Bethel Amy Church in Columbus and in the community. And I'm here because so many people fought, died, gave their lives for the vote, and now we're taking it for granted. So we gotta. It's about awareness and what's important.
Beautiful. Thank you, Rev Jim. And then phone number ending in 9159.
Hi, Joe. Excuse me, this is Cindy. I'm here tonight because I know elections have consequences, as we learned in 2018. I think it is important that we get young people, like they say, get people like in poor communities to come out and vote, because I think we need to take back the seats from the state houses all the way to the White House. That's why I'm here. I'm dedicated 100% in getting people signed up to vote. I feel this is one of the elections that is going to influence, like for my kids and my grandkids, we have to change history right about now. All the hate that's going on in our country, we have to get rid of that. And that's why I'm here.
Oh, it's great to hear you, Cindy. And then Alice.
I'm Alice Rubrish, Yellow Springs, Ohio. This is a critical election. Climate, equality, absolutely critical.
Thank you, dear. And then, hey, Jeff, I see you're on there.
I'm Jeff Gamblay. I'm volunteer staff with UUJO, and while voter registration is very important in this case, I'm here to document the fact that we've got about 35 people on board, and I'm going to make that, post that to Facebook and Instagram and Twitter to show that we are a force to be dealt with.
Yeah. Yes. Yeah. A new unsettling force, and we're here, as the song goes. And then there's iPad 28. Okay. We can come back to that. Did I miss anybody? Okay. Great. All right. So let me go to our next slide here. Susan, you want to do a little review on who votes in Ohio?
Yeah. As you can see on the slide that's in front of you, Ohio ranked 29th in the United States in voter turnout in 2018. We have 11,718,000 adults living in Ohio, and 8,070,917 are registered to vote, which means that 3,650,000 people are not registered, and there are a lot of reasons why. Only 54% of registered Ohio voters turned out. We have to have that be a much higher number. And in comparison, Minnesota turned out 64.2%, Colorado, Montana, Wisconsin, and Oregon all at least 61.5%. But right now, we have a problem here in Ohio. And as every election you hear that Ohio determines so many elections. So these are statistics and numbers that we cannot let we can't let be. And I wanted to just add, put a thing in. When Joan and I started talking about this, we talked about how there is so much more that we have in common as people than we do in terms of our differences. And I said to Joan, I thought we need to talk to people on the level where we are the same, because we pretty much worry about the same things, no matter who we are. We worry about the same things, but we're fighting a trend that started a long time ago. You know, it didn't start with Mr. Trump. It started a long time ago. And we say we're fighting for our democracy, and we are, but it's a democracy that really didn't even wasn't really a democracy until after the Civil War. And then after the Civil War, when we had Reconstruction and Black people were allowed to vote, then we were a democracy, you know, because more people, various people, as opposed to just white people, white men, were being allowed to vote, and there was a great backlash against it. I'm a history buff, so I'm not, I mean, I could talk about this stuff forever, but I'm reading this book now called How Democracies Die, and it talks about how white people in the South, but all over, were upset when Black people got the right to vote. And we're talking about this because one of the reasons we are here tonight is to talk about how we fight voter suppression. And it really started, you know, in Reconstructions. The authors of this book said that, you know, the powers that be changed the rules for voting once Black people were allowed to vote. And they said something like, give us a constitutional convention and I will fix it so that the Negro shall never be heard from. Now, if we were in class, I could really, you know, just talk about this and talk about this, but this is something, the reason I'm bringing it up is because we've got to not concentrate on Mr. Trump and his people. We are fighting something that began a long time ago, and the rumblings of all this, the rumblings of discontent have been with us for a long time. So now it's all coming to the surface thanks to Mr. Trump. But this voter suppression thing has been an issue since we became a real democracy. So.
Yep. Yes, indeed.
Since the 2010 elections, 24 states have implemented new restrictions on voting, and Joan and I are collecting resources and articles to keep everybody informed about all of the efforts to keep people from the polls. I just clipped an article today where in Wisconsin, a judge said that he ordered the Board of Elections in that state to go ahead and disenfranchise, I think it was 200,000 people who had been taken off the rolls. And he said, I absolutely have to do this. And he was doing it because the Board of Elections fought back. So when you fight back with this type of suppression, you don't expect a justice in the justice system. Alabama requires a photo ID to cast a ballot. Ohio and Georgia have enacted use it or lose it laws, which strike voters from registration rolls if they haven't participated in an election within a prescribed period of time. And a lot of this is just really subjective stuff, but manipulated so that the desired goal, which is to keep people of color, poor people, immigrants, college kids, old people off the rolls. Restrictions are a part of a broader strategy to tighten access to the ballot. And that this is an effort that was strengthened in 2013 by in this court case called Shelby County versus Holder. And that decision said that those states with the longest histories of discrimination no longer had to approve their voting changes with the federal government. Horrible, 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 horrible thing to do. Just as devastating to this country and to masses of people as was Andrew Johnson not requiring the federal government anymore to oversee elections. So this is a historical, we are seeing a continuation of the historical, I don't know, bigotry, bias, racism that has followed us to the present day.
That's true. One of the things that you can do if you didn't come to the December 28th session, where we went through this for about an hour actually, and we showed several videos and we talked about the history on voter suppression. But what you can do is come to the webinar on Monday, January 27th, where Susan and I are going to show the videos that we did on December 28th, and we're going to talk about them and hold discussion on voter suppression, how we can recognize it, and how we can protect ourselves and others from being victims of voter suppression. And I'll be sending out more of that information to everybody that's on the email list, but just make note, January 27th, Monday night, 7 o'clock. Okay. And then why do we want to register voter? One of the things that just astounded me last week is I heard an ACLU lawyer at a meeting say that, what was it, about 50% of the voter registration applications from OSU students were thrown out in the last election. Did I hear that right, Susan? When they were talking about it? Yeah, because they hadn't quite done them right. Because it can be a little bit tricky. But one of the things we want to do as volunteers and voter advocates is help people do that correctly so that they are registered. We know that low-income communities, communities of color, student communities, rural communities, and communities of elderly folk, especially those in retirement villages and such, and the nursing homes are all underrepresented in election turnout. These voices are not being heard. They need to be heard. And voter registration is just that first step in creating that more active, engaged citizenry and community that makes the beloved community that we dream about, right? Registered voters are more likely to join in neighborhood activities, contact elected officials, which is something that UUJO is, always working with folk in terms of mobilizing and organizing to have our voices heard with a greater impact at the State House. But they're more likely to contact elected officials and be very active in shaping, the governance of our nation and our state and our city. And big time elected officials pay attention to the communities that show up and vote. And we want all of our communities to be heard, all of our communities to be valued, and all of our voices to be listened to. So those of you who were there on December 28th, remember that we had about an hour and a half presentation from Ohio Votes about how to register people and how to look at absentee ballots and other things like that, the kind of nitty-gritty, very practical stuff. We have that on a 45-minute video now. And that 45-minute video is at this email address, which I will send you all as well. And we had handed out in several handouts yesterday and at the event. But we do have a video that can carry you through all of that material as well. Okay. So we're at 7:23 already. I think we may hold off on discussion a little bit. What do you think, Susan?
Yeah, we can hold off for a minute.
Okay.
Sorry, I had to put my dog out.
Yes, that's okay. So next steps. I'll tell you about before Election Day, and then Susan can tell you a little bit more about Election Day. There are some things that you can do now, and these are pretty general. We kind of start with the general and then move to the specific. First, make sure that you know that you're registered to vote. I mean, seriously, that your address is up to date. People move, they forget to update it. They get purged and they don't know it. Chris Johnson was telling me about a very young person a young adult at First UU Columbus who hadn't even been registered but maybe a year or two, but she was purged already. So there's no rhyme or reason on that. We got to check and make sure that you are registered to vote. You do that, you go to ohvote.org. ohvotes.org. Pardon me, it's got an S on it. But make sure you're registered. Know your ID laws. Confirm your polling place. Vote early by absentee ballot if you can, so you can help on Election Day get others to the polls and support them. If there's long lines, we're talking breaking out the pizza and water and lawn chairs, okay? You can really help by bringing voter engagement into your private spaces, your workspaces, your church spaces. Talk with family, coworkers, friends. Make sure they are registered and regularly check your registration status. Host a registration drive at your church or community center or other place where you gather. And if you need help with that, we can arrange to have, some of you who will be trained could come and help with others. If you're doing a kickoff, of course, we'll get somebody there to help with that. And then, of course, volunteer to be part of an advocacy team in your city to help register voters in Ohio and then help support them. So those are some immediate things. Anything to add to that, Susan, before you move on?
No, you're
Okay.
good.
I'm going to say speak truth to power. Yeah.
We are, we go ahead with that one, Joan, for a second.
Okay.
Go on, I'm sorry.
Okay. One of the other things you can do right now is contact Congress, national level, tell them to support the Voting Rights Advancement Act of 2019 and the For the People Act, because these are attempts at national support and national guarantee of various voter rights across the country. I got a typo on that. And then you can find your congressperson or senator at legislature.ohio.gov. Pardon me, that should be US. That's pardon me about that. but you can look up your congressperson or senator online, and you can use that to get a hold of them on the national.
And what we urge people to do, what are we are urging people to do is to use social media to help get other people to do it. This has to be such a wide and expansive drive. So like the other night, I can't remember what happened. So many things go on with this administration, but maybe it was the Iran thing. But I got the names and the phone numbers of the senators, you know, from Ohio, and I posted it, and then I tweeted it and retweeted it. And I asked my friends in their states to do the same. And that's in addition to all the other stuff, the sign-on stuff that was going on. But sometimes people will respond better personally if they know you personally. And if you personally ask them to do that, they will do it. So we're really urging people to use social media.
Yes. Okay. And then on election day, of course, you can vote and help others vote, because we find that there are folk that need rides. We are finding that folk may need support if there are long lines. And that's one of the things we talk about in voter suppression, is in certain neighborhoods and certain precincts with certain populations, they just wind up not having enough voting machines. And so the lines get long. And when the lines get long, people drop off and people don't vote. So we have to be there when the lines get long to support with water, with donuts or snacks, and with lawn chairs or places to sit for people that can't stand that long. That's going to be part of voter advocacy team as well. Sign up to be a poll worker, sign up to be an election observer, volunteer with one of our teams to drive people, report incidents of voter irregularities on election day to Ohio Votes and to the League of Women Voters, because there are collaboration partners in this, and they have been known to come in and look at a situation if people are able to report it to them early enough to be corrected.
They have been known to. We have attorneys on site. We have had attorneys on these different at these different places. So if there are voting irregularities, we can get the law involved right away. And it's really important for there to be people who, that's their gift, that's their talent, that's their passion, looking for the irregularities, because those things happen more often than we think. We don't really talk about them. And it can be something like, half the voting machines aren't working, or little things that you wouldn't think were intentional, but a lot of that stuff is intentional. And so in the trainings that we'll do, we will be bringing up all of that kind of stuff so we can get people to develop eyes that see that kind of stuff.
Yes. Yeah, and when we do the webinar on suppression, you'll see some of that, because there were instances in Georgia where they just did not think to bring extension cords for the electronic voting machines into a Black neighborhood, right?
Right.
Okay, right. So, Ohio advocacy teams. There are three main tasks of our teams: to educate, that's to help offer education programs like using this material, using the video from Ohio Votes, using the videos that we have on voter suppression, but educate people in your congregations, on your teams, so that people will want to know why they are needed to help register and support people in voting. Then, of course, register, mobilize, organize local communities to register. We're going to tell you a little bit tonight about how to organize community conversations and registration information tables and even canvases. But one of the things that we're finding to be most effective is community conversations. It's not enough just to register somebody to vote and go away. We see this with the OSU students, where they registered a ton of students and half of it was wrong. And, that they just tossed out the registrations. So we register people so we can talk to people, so we can see why they're interested in voting and why it's in their best interest to do that. We'll talk about that more in a minute. Susan will tell you about that. But those are three immediate ways. You can think of other wonderful ways of helping people register to vote. And then support. create networks of support, maybe at these community conversations, to help get people to the polls when needed, to get rides when needed, to fill out absentee ballot requests when needed, remind people to vote, and offer rides. So educate, register, support. These are the three things, these are the three elements to the mantra that we are going to be repeating throughout 2020. Okay? And then to be supportive of the advocacy teams, we need fundraisers. People that can help us raise the money so that we can offer the training and teach people how to do the conversations, etc. And then social media, we need some Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram fluent folk to help with that kind of work. So those are the support things that we need with this Every Vote Matters, this effort to register folk here in Ohio. Okay. Do you want to take this one or shall I, Susan?
You can do it. I can do it.
Okay.
We're going to be, we have envisioned that we will have an initial, Joan and I have an initial team of 10. And on these, and each person in our team, we are going to be asking to form 10 teams. So one team of 10 will have a group of 10 people, each of whom will develop 10 leaders themselves, but you'll be trained to do it. And the reason we want to do that is because we need as many people on the ground working this as possible. We really need, and we need for people on the ground who are not afraid and who are very well informed about what's going on, what to look for, what to teach, and what questions to ask, and what questions to look for that haven't been asked. So we have these leadership trainings planned online and in person, and when we have the next webinar, we'll be able to get more, I guess, specific about all of the teams that we're trying to form. Create a team of your own with another team leader. And we thought that it would be better to have co-team leaders. Joan and I thought it would be better to have co-team leaders as opposed to one leader. So that would mean, though, that each team leader would have to get 10 people. So I guess that's 120 people. We'll work out the numbers, but I would have to get 10. Joan would have to get 10 because we're co-team leaders, and then all of our 10 would have to get 10 people. Yeah. But the support thing is very important, and it's really critical, I think, in through here, because a lot of people are really emotionally devastated and tired about what's going on. Some people have lost belief, I guess, that things are going to get better. I have talked to people who have told me that they're very depressed. So having a team leader helper with you, like a team partner, I think is very important. This is social justice work, the likes of which we have not done, even though we've always fought for the right to vote. But this is a little bit different because of the administration that is in office. And so we have an obligation to support each other. And that's why team leaders are very important. So 2 leaders and 10 members per team. And we'll talk about that later. We will be coordinating our team's efforts with Ohio Votes and UUJO. And we will be training people to have community conversations. And we're going to talk a little bit more about the ethos behind that. We're going to organize registration tables and coordinate with Ohio Votes and UUJO for canvassing, and then have a toolkit that all of us will have so that we're all doing the same thing and all saying the same thing to all of the people that we're trying to register. This has to be a cohesive effort.
And so you don't have to scramble for stuff on your own either.
Right.
It'll be right there that you can use when you need it. Okay. And just a quick thing on the goals, we're trying to get at least 4 teams in each major city. We hope for many more. And each team would have 2 leaders and 10 members. And each team member registers at least 10 people. So that's where you start getting, 120 here times 10 there. And pretty soon you've got a lot of people registered. But that's what our goals are. It's kind of a step goal. Hope that makes sense to you. When we do the leadership training, we'll train the leaders and go into this a little bit more. And as you're thinking about this, let me put in an ad. If you think already that you would want to be a team leader or a team member or volunteer for fundraising or social media work, Email me at info@uujo.org with your name, your email address, phone, city, and zip. And that way we can start to put together possible pairs of team leaders, perhaps, or start working on the fundraising as a statewide team, things like that. So here's an advertisement that you all can take. But email me info@uujo.org with your name, email address, of course, phone, city, and zip code. Okay? And I'll repeat that ad later on.
You sure will. She's all through this. Go ahead. I'm sorry.
Okay, so we're going to talk about conversations, and I'll just start off with a little quote from Margaret Wheatley and toss it to Susan. We know that human conversation is the most ancient and easiest way to cultivate the conditions for change. This is according to Margaret Wheatley. Personal change, community, organizational change, planetary change. If we can sit together and talk about what's important to us, we begin to come alive. We share what we see, what we feel, what we listen to, what others see and feel. And that's the philosophy behind the emphasis on community conversations.
So there's a lot of different ways to organize, and the conversations is one that I really believe in. I have to, in full disclosure, I've done canvassing before and have had conversations on porches with people, and that's when I kind of really realized how hungry a lot of people are just to talk, because a lot of people are just ignored, period. They're just ignored. But the downside for me personally of the canvassing, going door to door, is that I could register someone and have a conversation, and then that person still not show up to vote. Why? Because there weren't any real human connections made. What we are wanting to do is go into places where we may never have gone before, where we wouldn't have even thought of going, and sitting down and having conversations with people. We don't know what they believe. We don't know if they're for Trump or for Buddha. We don't know, but that's not the concern. The concern is to show people that someone cares, that they care. I mean, if you can change minds, you can change hearts, like Wheatley said, just by having a conversation with someone and finding out the places where we are so similar. When Joan and I talked, I said, the thing that I want to ask people and ask them to talk about is what keeps you up at night. And I know that there are a lot of people, Republican, Democrat, Black, white, immigrant, Muslim, Jewish, that all of these people are plagued by and bothered by some of the same problems. We are all facing those things. So if we could get people to talk about it, there's something that's pretty strengthening in realizing that you're not the only one. And so when we have conversations, we get to listen to them, but we also get strengthened, because when we get to hear about the situations and the predicaments that people are in. The other night, I only listen to a teeny bit of the news because I can't handle it. I think that, I have to protect my spirit because all that stuff is too toxic. And so a friend of mine texted me, and she said, there's a special with Dave Chappelle, the comedian. And she said, why don't you watch? She didn't know anything about me having like a spiritual temper tantrum about all the stuff that was going on. So I turned to this thing for Dave Chappelle, and he's a really good comedian. He can be kind of crass, but he is good. He's so good. And I found myself laughing. But there's one thing that he said, because he was addressing the malaise and the depression and the despondency and the feeling of hopelessness that a lot of people have. And he said, you guys are not doing it right. He said, when you guys get together, you want to fight. He says, comedians don't fight. We just sit down and talk about it. We just sit down and talk about it. And in the talking, they find common ground. And I thought that was really, really powerful. So these conversations, where we'll have them in churches, we're going to have one at Pastor Tim's church in February. We're going to go to cities around the state of Ohio. We're going to go into rural areas. We're going to go into I'm going into areas that I never would have gone into. And I tell Joan I'm not going there by myself, but I'm going because in my heart, in my heart, I feel like we can do a whole lot more talking with each other, listening to each other, and therefore strengthening with each other. And after the conversation, what we want to do is register people then. It's a different thing. It's just not, I need you to vote and goodbye. I've heard you, I've listened to you, I understand what you're going through, would you like to vote? That kind of thing. And we think that that'll make more of an impact in this state. So in a group or on one-on-ones, we want to give ourselves and our people to connect with each other and to create this community, this beloved community. And we're hoping, and we're going to find a way to quantify this, to keep numbers on this. We're hoping that we will build more voter advocacy teams and increase the number of people who go to the polls.
And also in this process, they'll form some networks themselves so that they can even help one another get to the polls and remind one another to get to the polls or help with absentee ballots as needed. So there's also that aspect of organizing them through the community conversations too. So
what we want to do is meet people where they are. And the listening part is the skill set we really have to practice. Most of the time when we're in conversations, we want to talk. We are going to be training each other to listen and to find the things that people are saying that really hit us. Because that will begin to form a bond between us and the others. We had a training, I don't know if you were at this one, Joan, where we had to do some of this listening stuff. And I'm telling you, all of this stuff for me has been a challenge because I'm kind of shy and I kind of stay to myself. So to have to sit and talk with somebody, I'm saying in case anybody else is like I am, to have to sit and talk to somebody you don't know and all that, it was kind of daunting, but it isn't anymore. So I was sitting in this group and I was talking to this young white girl. She's young, she looked like she was in her 20s. And we were talking about poverty. And, we all grew up with some misconceptions and some ideas. And we can think, oh, you can be poor, but you're not poor like Black people, or you're not poor like brown people. You don't know poverty. By the time this young girl told her story of how poor she had been and how she had lived, and I didn't want to hold my jaw open in the course of the conversation, but I was stunned. And what happened is that immediately, as I listened to her, the tenor, the texture of our relationship changed. So just listening was transformative for me. So where it's feasible, we want all of us to be trained to listen, but where it's feasible, hold discussions with neighborhood organizations and such as public housing residence councils or congregations. We can do some door-to-door, but we just really want to go to where people are. You can have some wonderful conversations, and you can probably get a whole lot of people to register in a barbershop, for instance. Barbershops, especially in the Black neighborhood, barbershops are works of art. They're just works of art. So to go to places where you normally would not go, and then become part of an advocacy team and ask your neighbors and friends to join the community conversations or canvassing work for the purpose of building a community. I guess what we're trying to do is put back together what is being so systematically being torn apart.
And the goal of a conversation, whether it's one-on-one or in a group, or whether it's formal or informal, is to build relationship. Because we're more responsive to people we know and have a relationship with. I mean, Susan was just telling you that. We also, in these conversations, we identify somebody's motivations. We hear what's important to them. How does that connect to the work or the engagement with the voting? Explore their networks and connections. How are they positioned within their community or their congregation or their group or their citizens group? Are they self-motivated? Do they look to others for leadership? Do they have relationships from work or life that are relevant to increasing voter engagement and voter support? This might also be a lead-in to see if they could be a good team leader or part of another team. When we're talking to folk, we hear their goals, what they're most interested in getting out of the experience of this conversation. Are they looking for a group to be part of? Are they looking for social ties? Is this a way for them to also expand themselves into their community? Are they upset and looking for something to do about it? And then we strengthen our own skills in conversation when we do this, because it's a chance for us to practice active listening, making assessments, building connections, not only with potential team members and engaging folk for voting, but once again to create that community and to mend that hole in our social wholeness that has developed through these last few years of chaos and these decades of increasing division.
And I want to add something there. In this book, How Democracies Die, they talk about Newt Gingrich. You know, he's been pretty silent throughout the latest round of whatever's going on, but he was really a person who kind of started, I don't know, this movement to transform politics from, you know, kind of respectability such as it was to what it is now. And this is something that he said. He said, we're fighting a war. It's a war for power. And I can take those words of Gingrich and say to us, we are fighting a war. We are fighting a war for control control of our lives. We are fighting for our own survival. We are fighting for our dignity. We are fighting for all of that. He said he doesn't, you know, he didn't want people to be cautious and polite and prudent and all that. We want people to be to know their worth. I guess that's what I'm trying to say. This movement is for us to remind ourselves and to remind people that we need for all of us to know that we are the power. We have power, and we are the power. And so now we are called upon to use the power, and the way we use the power is by voting. So,
want me to take it?
Yep.
Okay, so you invite people to a conversation. Sometimes you might want to do that by taking flyers door to door. You can email or mail invitations, or have people go and ask folk to come. It could be a potluck after church services or synagogue services. It could be, you know, that you have conversations at a table in a mall with a bowl of candy, or something after work, or coffee, or at your house for dessert. There's any number of ways you can stage and hold conversations. If you're doing it as a team, you might want to get about 24 people in a circle with dessert at a congregational community center or something like that, or even at a library, and talk about these things. Any number of ways of doing that for your team. You ask these questions. First question, getting to know you. How long have you been in the neighborhood? How long have you been part of this congregation if you're doing it in a church? What do you find here that keeps you involved? And then kind of follow up with more inquiry. Then you identify those motivations. How are you doing given everything going on around us these days? What's been the thing that most gets to you? What keeps you up at night? What keeps you up at night? Then explore experiences. Are there ways you found to deal with this? Have you been involved in anything? Are there other people you've gotten to do something with? Have you found support in your faith community if you have one? And then at the end of the conversation, you're talking about really doing more to make sure that people vote for economic, racial, and environmental justice and our values this year. How are we tying what keeps you up at night to actually empowering folk to vote? Do you want to be part of that? What would be exciting for you to do as part of that effort? And are there things you think that you should really prioritize and that we should really prioritize? So those are kind of like the basic questions that you would use during a community conversation. Okay. Then at the end of any conversation, you ask for commitment. You ask for commitment. One, A minimal commitment. Are you registered to vote? Can I register you now? Can I remind you to vote around election time? Minimum. A medium commitment. Would you come to a gathering to watch a new video about voter suppression and what we can do about it? Unless you're already using the video as part of your community conversation, you might choose to do that. Or higher commitment. I can tell that you see this as a really important thing. Would you like to work on a team to help others be registered and then support others to get to the polls? Are there others that you think would be interested? So that's how you'd wrap up a community conversation, with asking them from minimal to medium to higher commitment to be involved. Does that make sense? We're going to try this out on February 12th in the evening sometime. We haven't quite set the time yet because Susan just arranged this like about an hour ago. And that's going to be at Bethel AME in Columbus. And so I'll be sending out word to you all. And those of you, especially those of you in Columbus, or those of you that came to December 28th, this would be a way of, you know, participating in a community conversation and learning firsthand how to do it. And we could do these in Akron, we can do these in Dayton, we can do these in Cincinnati, so that people who are training to be team members and team leaders can also participate in the community conversation before leading them themselves. Okay? Okay, let's talk. I'm going to unmute you all, and I'm going to ask, what will you commit to today? Will you talk to someone about this workshop, about voting, about the other workshops you've taken? Will you check your own registration? Will you volunteer to join an advocacy team? Or will you train to be a team leader? Does anybody have any thoughts that they would want to share right now?
I can go first, Joan.
Okay.
This is Tad. I am hosting a politically oriented meeting tomorrow, and I'm going to share out the Ohio Votes Voter Engagement Training 2018 video to my folks there, as well as some of the shorter videos that were provided for. But hopefully my folks will take a look at those videos and learn from them.
Great. And they might want to form a couple of teams.
Exactly.
Yes, and then we can help with training the team leaders and getting them connected, especially with the materials that Ohio Votes provides and other coordination. Anybody else have any thoughts?
This is Kathleen. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. I'm willing to train to be a team leader.
Yay.
I don't know who my co-team leader would be, but maybe somebody else is looking for another person to be a team leader with them. They can let me know if that's the case.
Yeah, and we can get you connected with somebody else for sure.
Mm-hmm.
There's more than one way to make that happen.
My biggest interest is in trying to work within some of the Columbus public housing projects. I don't know if that's really the right word, but like complexes.
Uh-huh.
And also within Columbus City Schools to try to get a more organized approach to getting high school seniors registered to vote.
Oh, that is great. And we do have a great connection with the coalition on homelessness and housing in Ohio, so that we know that there's a way of making those connections around the public housing.
Good.
Okay. Any other thoughts?
Ohio has a primary election in March, isn't that correct?
Yep.
Yeah.
Okay, so we need
St.
to.
Patrick's Day.
What's that?
It's on St. Patrick's Day.
Yeah, right. It's second or third Tuesday of the month. It's in the middle of the month. It's weird.
Yes.
But we need to try to get people registered in time for the primary as well as the major election in the general election in the fall.
Very true, because all politics is local, and so it doesn't matter. We have been saying this, that it doesn't matter. We can do an amazing job in terms of what we're going to do for national elections, but the local elections are critical. So, you know what I've found, and I don't know if Joan has found, there's a lot of people don't know that there's a primary election coming up. A lot of people, you'll be surprised how many people don't know. So there's little things that we can put out, again, using social media, to remind people, to tell people that there's a primary election, and then to remind them to check their registration. I think that's critical. That's a really good point. Thank you.
Hey, anybody else have some thoughts about this?
So I just checked. I didn't realize the deadline for that to register for the primary in March is February 13th, apparently.
Yeah.
February what?
February 18th.
February 18th.
Yeah.
So anybody you can register so they can vote in the primary, that was helpful too. Okay.
Joan, I was thinking that because February 18th is coming up really soon.
Yeah.
I was thinking, I don't know about other people, but my church has a community meal at the end of the month, like the last Saturday. But I wasn't just thinking about that community meal. I was thinking there's lots of them in Akron. So I was wondering if I looked and could find a list of those and a contact person, then maybe we could get permission to go to a few community meals. It would be a great gathering place to be able to talk to people and register folks. That's just what I was thinking, especially short term, because we're so limited, you know.
Right. No, that's a great idea. And it's not just registering folk, it's making sure that their addresses are correct if they've moved, and checking to see if they've been purged.
Oh, yeah.
And if you have never looked at Ohio or ohvotes.org, check it out on your computers or your smartphone, and you will see this wonderful little compact, perfectly spaced and articulated website that lets you check it easily. Lets you do it easily. It's just right out there, very, very simple.
And again, it's good to have your device and to let people see on the spot if they're registered or not. When we were registering people for the 2018 elections, we were talking about the purge, and many people hadn't even heard the word purge. I mean, you know, we take things for granted because we who are involved in the work hear it so much, but a lot of people had not even heard of purge. So when people would start to walk away, no, I don't want to vote, and yes, I'm registered, and we would say, well, do you know that? And then we would tell the little story about how many people have been purged, and people were genuinely surprised. They were surprised. They didn't know that that was going on. So we had people, with our devices, we had people check their registrations on the spot. We got so many people. We got so many people who found out on parking lots that they had been purged. And so we were able to register them and kind of fire them up, because we said, I will never see you again, but I sure hope you turn out to the polls. And so using your devices and just saying the stuff that we take for granted, this is what we have to always know. What we think everybody knows, hardly nobody knows. And so we have to act like people don't know and operate from that perspective.
So basically, if you're going to one of these events, you need to be armed with a laptop or a tablet and have an internet connection. So
or your
do it on the
iPhone. We were standing out on parking lots. I don't think we had, but we were able to get to those sites on parking lots.
Right. If you got a smartphone, it's wonderful.
Yeah, if you have a smartphone, you can do it. Now, if you don't have a smartphone, maybe that's when you need to take a friend with you who might be able to help you out on it. But we were standing on parking lots, and we would pull it up on our phones. One lady had an iPad, and we were able to get to it very easily.
Yeah, because that is a real issue for us in all populations.
Yeah.
Okay.
That's a great point, Susan, that you make. And this is biblical. And I just want to amplify that there is nothing that is more motivating for a voter than to recognize that his or her voter registration has been purged. That gets people fired up. It really does. We have about at least 6 or 7 people that were at our meeting, at our launch meeting for UU the Vote last night, here at this meeting today. And I kind of introduced the idea, but we didn't really develop it into commitments. But I am looking at hopefully making that the core of an advocacy team. Those people that were there at the first at the launch, and with any luck, to have them build their own teams and build out from there. That's y'all are on notice. This is what I think we're going to have to do, and it's and it may as well start now as any time later, because it needs to start now. Thank you for being here today and for being there yesterday.
And it may sound like we're talking about this big complex thing, but it's really just 3 elements: educate, register, and support. Educate, register, and support. Those are the 3 elements that we keep working with. Those of you that saw UU the Vote yesterday, you know they also added hub congregations, which, yes, we can use some hub congregations in Akron or Cincinnati and places. We've got 2 now in Columbus, First UU Columbus and Bethel AME. So we've got a couple of hub congregations here. They don't have to be UU for those of you that are UU. And they also added spiritual sustenance, spiritual support to this. And that's something that as we progress during this year, I know that Susan and I want to pay particular attention to, especially as we work with our team leaders and our team members, so that people don't get burnt out and they don't get frustrated and they don't start, doing the blame game and dehumanizing the others and things like that we do when we're stressed out. So we're going to pay attention to that as well. But our goals, 3 big ones: educate, register, and support. And once again, you see an ad right here. Email info@uujo.org. Okay? Your name, address, phone, city, and zip, and what you want to do, so we can start helping people put things together. Now, are there any questions? Any other questions or concerns or things that you want to bring up?
What would be the task, Joan,
Yes.
for a person who would take on the social media work? What would be the tasks involved?
Well, this is where you would talk with Jeff Gamblee and myself about what we can do, because we'll need a good solid Facebook presence. We might even want to think about another Facebook page. We'll certainly be wanting to use Twitter a lot more effectively, because I don't tweet worth a darn. And that's something that we can use effectively, especially if we're reaching out into youth situations. Instagram. We're actually going to be putting some of this tonight on Instagram, because people want to see stories in picture now. And so we've got to think through that creatively. So I can't give you more detail than that, other than to say we're going to have to think in new ways of communicating in order to generate the interest and the excitement that we need for this.
Thank you.
Joan?
Yeah.
How do people get the registration papers? Where's the blank registration paper? How do we get a hold of that?
Okay. That's part of the segment on how to do registration. And you go to your local board of elections. Okay. And you can pick them up by the stack. Or you can print them off on your computer online. And you can register online. So there's a couple different ways of doing that, if you've got a good computer setup.
We want people to to kind of go through the training on how to correctly fill them out. The people who are registering people, we want people to go through the training. You know, it doesn't take long, but it's important because registrations are thrown out for the most minute things. So we need for people to do that. And also to understand that if they are on the street or having community conversations and doing these registrations, that they have to be turned in within 10 days after they're filled out, or they are negated. They don't count. So we think that the registration, the education on how to register people is critical. One of the things that I was told when I went down to the Board of Elections was that the lady said, the director of whatever it was she was the director of said, everybody thinks they can register people to vote. And then she proceeded to tell me how many voter registrations had been thrown out. We want a zero, as close to zero number of registrations thrown out. So it is critical that we are all on the same page. We know what is allowed, what's not allowed, so that we don't have. And we're going to track it. We're going to track it so that we can see how many of our registrations are being thrown out, because we can't have it.
Yeah. And that's one of the reasons.
Toledo and Lucas County, the libraries have forms for voter registration.
Right.
So I don't know if all the libraries across Ohio have that.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Most libraries do, but what and I think when people register even there, a lot of them fill them out wrong. There's a little teeny things that people don't do. So we don't have any control over that, but we do have control over the forms that we have in our hands and the people who we register.
This is why we want our team leaders in particular to know more of the detail as well, so that they can help their team members look at that and make sure that all of the voting, the registration forms are good. And if you couldn't be there on December 28th and hear the big lecture on that, like I said, it took an hour and 20 minutes. We do have a video that goes through the basics from Ohio Votes. I have it up on the screen right now. It's also on YouTube, and you just search for the video, Ohio Votes Voter Engagement Training 2018. This is the one that Tad's using tomorrow with his training for some people. And that gives you the information. Also, the team leaders would have in their toolkit a wonderful video from Ohio Votes about how to register homeless folk, because they can vote and you can register them, but it does take some knowledge on their special needs. And we're not going to go into that tonight because that's a different workshop, but that's also on the Ohio Votes website. So go to Ohio Votes and you will see the video on how to register people. You'll see a video on how to register homeless people. Does that help?
Yes.
Did you say there was a typo in that HHTP website?
Just go to Ohio Votes.
Okay, thank you.
Yep. Just Google Ohio Votes. Okay. Other questions?
Just real quick, Joan. Does anyone have the Slack link for UU the Vote? They were mentioning it yesterday, and I'm having a heck of a time finding it.
Jeff, did you have that? Jeff Gambley.
Oh, the Slack?
Yeah. Okay. Jeff obviously had to leave. So no, I do not have the Slack connection for that. I'm sorry. But I can, if you email me, Tad, I can tell you how to get it.
Okay. All right. Thank you, Joan.
Okay. Because I know the people that put it together. Okay. Let's see. I'm checking my chat box here. Oh, Bill Jordan suggests that you talk to city council members about doing voter registration and promotion at their community meetings. Good. There's a good little informational tidbit. Thank you, Bill. That's really good. Okay. Other thoughts before we close out? We said we were, we're a little over time, but not bad.
I have a question. Those voter suppression efforts included a card that they mailed to people. Is it possible to get a copy of one of those cards to kind of put in your arsenal and show people that they were actually sent cards, and they may have been sent to the wrong address that they had to reply to? Those cards that were supposed to reply to that triggered the purge of so many people.
I don't have one, but Susan, we could probably research
We
that.
can look into see if we can get one. Yeah.
Yeah.
I think that's an excellent idea.
Yeah, I don't have one, but I'll check it out. Okay, good stuff, guys. Yes, Chris.
What's the status on on how we're going to be tracking forms? So if how are we doing that, and are we ready for that anytime soon?
Well, this is where the teams would work together so that the team leaders know how many forms have been filled out, and make sure the team leaders would have to make sure that those are mailed in to the Board of Elections at the proper county, depending on which county you're in, at the right time. And then the team leaders would need to report to me or Ohio Votes. That's Maria Bruno. She was there December 28th. How many were collected and sent?
But how do we track a form and to see if it's, how do we track to see if our registrations are being accepted and things like that?
We had, when we had a meeting back at the end of the summer, I guess, with somebody from the Board of Elections, what she suggested is that for the, and we had a stack, Crazy Faith had a stack of voter registration forms, and we put numbers on them. Our own numbers, because they don't have numbers, right? So we put our own numbers on them, and each team leader would be given the batch of voter registration forms. We would keep track of the numbers. And the lady from the Board of Elections said that they would notice that a certain and a person's name would be connected with those numbers, so we would have the name. And she said that if they noticed that a certain number, certain name, I don't remember if we were giving her the name of the numbers. I think it was the numbers, because we had the names. As they would notice the numbers that were being turned back or rejected, they would let us know, and then we would have a way of getting in touch with the person who had that batch of voter registration forms to see what types of remedial training we needed to do. Right. So it's kind of a rough, crude way of tracking it, but we hope that it's going to work until we find something more sophisticated.
Yeah, and another plan that Maria Bruno had out of Ohio Votes was that we'd make copies of random registration forms, and we'd note which team they came from. And then after the allotted time for getting them into the system, we'd check them online and make sure that they were online properly. And if we didn't see them, then we'd know that there was an issue with that team.
So should we be, if say we do some registrations in the near, should we be making copies basically?
Yes.
Yeah. I would say that.
That's part of your team leader training, is what to do with the voter registration forms to make sure that they're in there properly, and then we get some randomized so that we're able to make sure that we're doing them right. Okay. And to double check that the state is putting them in right, or your county is putting them in right.
Right.
Because you may have them filled out beautifully, but like in Georgia, they stuck thousands of them in a drawer and didn't even put them in until after the election.
Absolutely.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So we're looking for that too. That's why League of Women Voters is also part of our coalition here. Okay. Oh, and Elaine notes that Women Marches this weekend is a good time to talk to people. Certainly talking about voting and such. Might talk just to, in general, talk about the elections and voting and the need to be properly registered is something that we can do immediately, whether we got a form in our hand or not.
Right.
Raise the energy on this.
Right.
Other comments or questions? All righty. Then I'll remind you that on the 27th, we have the webinar on voter suppression. We have our first community conversation on February 12th. Email me and we'll set up a time for the full training with a group in your congregation or in your community, you know, Dayton, Cincinnati, Cleveland, etc. We'll make sure that it happens. And then we'll go from here. And I'll close with some words from Howard Thurman then, who said, don't ask yourself what the world needs. Ask yourself what makes you come alive, and then go do that. Because what the world needs now is people who have come alive. And I hope that you all are coming alive with the idea of really empowering folk to have their voice heard in this world.
Right.
So thank y'all. Thank you, and thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Joan.
Thank you,
Joan.
Susan,
Thank you.
too.
Good
Yes.
night.
Thank you, Susan.
You're welcome. Bye-bye.